The science vessel took 3 days to finish scanning the gas giant. 3 days. 3 days of drifting on the edge of wolf space while a dozen people in clean research coats pointed sensors at a red-banded planet and argued excitedly over storm movement, pressure readings, and atmospheric composition. I protected them from pirates, spacers, mercenaries, equipment failure, and boredom. Mostly boredom. Boredom is dangerous in space. People think danger announces itself with alarms and incoming fire. Sometimes it comes as quiet hours stacked on quiet hours until your mind starts opening doors you meant to keep shut. The scientists were happy, at least. Every few hours, one of them would hail me with an update I did not understand and had not asked for. Vanguard Escort, this is Caldera Finch. We're reading unusual ammonia crystal formation in the northern band. Good, I said. Very good, actually. Even better. Another hour. Vanguard Escort, we may need to adjust orbit by 0.03 degrees. Try not to crash into the big red thing. There was a pause. Understood. By the end of the 3rd day, they had all the data they needed, or at least enough data to justify asking for more funding, which seemed to be the real purpose of science. So now we were heading back. The longsword sat steady beside the Caldera Finch, close enough to intervene, far enough not to crowd their instruments. I matched their speed and brought us into formation off their starboard quarter. The red gas giant filled half the cockpit view behind them, all rust-colored storms and glowing bands, beautiful in the way things are beautiful when they can kill you without noticing. I set the ship to autopilot. The controls answered with a soft chime. FTL spool beginning, the computer said. I know, I muttered. The grav drive woke beneath the deck, low and deep, like some metal heart remembering how to beat. The longsword vibrated through the frame. Console lights shifted from idle blue to active white. Outside, the science vessel's engines brightened as it prepared to jump with us. Caldera Finch, this is Vanguard Escort, I said. Drive spooling, match on my mark. Copy, Vanguard, matching speed and vector. The voice on the other end sounded too awake. Scientists always sounded awake when they were excited or terrified. I had not yet learned to tell the difference. The drive reached charge. The cockpit tightened. That is the only way I know how to describe it. Right before FTL, the air seems to hold its breath. Instruments hum sharper. Your skin knows something impossible is about to happen, even after you have done it 100 times. Mark. Stars stretched. Space folded. The black ahead became a tunnel of white streaks racing past the viewport, every point of light dragged into a line by speed and physics I trusted only because engineers kept telling me I had to. The Caldera Finch jumped with us, its silhouette steady off port, a dark shape against the long blur of stars. A few hours of quiet waited ahead. Real quiet this time. The kind that gets under your ribs. I leaned back in the captain's chair and exhaled. Archer snored behind me. It was not a delicate sound. It was somewhere between a clogged ventilation duct and a territorial warning. He slept in the corner behind the chair, curled into the nest he had made from my old clothes. Not the bedding I bought him, not the reinforced crash mat, not the second crew bunk in the hab. My clothes. He had claimed them months ago and defended them like stolen treasure. I had tried to wash them more than once. The first attempt ended with him planting one heavy paw on the pile and staring at me until I remembered how attached I was to my hand. The second attempt ended with him dragging the entire pile into the cargo access corridor and lying across it like a smug boulder. The third attempt never really began. I reached for an old jacket, and Archer made a sound that caused the maintenance drone to retreat under the console. So the clothes stayed. Old shirts, a worn jacket, a spare undersuit, a scarf from Mara I never wore because it itched like punishment. All of it smelled like dust, oil, engine heat, Aquila sun, and probably me. Archer loved it. I pretended not to. The ship held course. The science vessel held beside us. The white stars raced by in long, silent streaks. I watched them for a while. Then I stood. The captain's chair hissed softly as I shifted my weight. Archer opened one eye. "Stay," I said. He closed it again. I left the cockpit and stepped into the module behind it. The The long swords all in one berth was not much, but it was mine. A compact 2x1 hab, built to pretend efficiency, was the same thing as comfort. It had everything a crew needed if the crew had low standards and no desire for privacy. 2 beds sat along opposite walls, narrow and bolted down, with storage tucked beneath them. One was mine. The other existed mostly in theory. I had once tried to convince Archer to sleep there instead of in the cockpit, but that would have required him to abandon his treasure trove of stolen laundry, and Archer did not negotiate with terrorists or ship captains. There was a little seating nook built into the wall, 1 chair that folded out with a groan, and a metal table that could be pulled down and locked into place if you hit it in exactly the right spot. Then there was the galley. Calling it a galley was generous. It was a 2-burner hot plate, a hot calf machine, 3 cabinets that never closed right, and a refrigerator unit that came up only chest high. The fridge had 1 setting, too cold. Everything in it either froze, sweated, or considered doing both, depending on the hour. Perks of flying a military vessel, I said to no one. I started the calf machine. It answered with a gurgle, a click, and a wet slurp that sounded like something dying bravely. Then the smell hit. Hot calf. Real calf, not station powder, not ration brew, not the burnt sludge the quartermaster insisted was combat ready. This was from home. Thank God for Mara. A package had arrived a few weeks ago, routed through more stations than I cared to count. Inside were several bags of Aquila-grown calf, wrapped tight, a bundle of jerky for Archer, a pair of repaired gloves I had not remembered leaving behind, and a letter. Mara wrote letters like she spoke, efficiently, sharply, with affection hidden where it could deny being seen. She told me the south fence was holding. The goats were still ungrateful. The water collector had developed a new sound, and Dane claimed it was fine, which meant she had called a repairman. Tala from the seed shop asked if I was eating enough. Bren had raised his prices again and deserved whatever misfortune found him. She ended with, Dain sends his love. Doubtful. Dain probably grunted from another room while Mara wrote it and later denied involvement. Still, I kept the letter folded in my locker. The calf machine finished choking itself and produced half a mug of dark liquid that smelled like home and tasted like stubbornness. I carried it to the seating nook. The chair folded out with a complaint. I sat, reached to the wall, and pulled down the metal table. It stuck halfway. Of course it did. I hit the left hinge with the heel of my palm. It dropped and locked into place. Military engineering, I muttered. Threaten it until it works. Behind me came scraping, then dragging, then a huff of effort. I turned. Archer was backing out of the cockpit with one of my old coats caught in his teeth, not just carrying it, dragging it like he had slain it in honorable combat. The coat's sleeve caught briefly on the doorway. Archer pulled harder, something tore. That better not be the brown one. He ignored me. He dragged the coat across the hab, dropped it at my feet, circled twice, stepped on the sleeve, circled again, then collapsed onto it with a heavy plop. The entire deck seemed to accept his decision. I looked down at him. He looked up at me. What? He sighed and rested his chin on the coat. I smiled despite myself. You're disgusting. His tail tapped once against the deck. I set the calf on the table, opened my datapad, and stared at the last entry. The words waited. They always did. I took a sip of calf. Hot, bitter, perfect. Outside the hull, stars stretched white and endless. Inside, Archer breathed at my feet. I began writing again. Now where was I? Right. The decision I kept pretending was not a decision. After Major Rourke came to the farm, the house changed. Not in any way someone else would notice. The same porch boards creaked. The same water collector coughed through the morning cycle. The same goats escaped the same places because goats are proof the universe enjoys repetition. But something had shifted beneath all of it. The Vanguard slate sat in my room. Dane's badge stayed in my pocket. I worked harder than I needed to. Everyone knew it. Mara watched me from the porch some evenings, with that expression she got when she was waiting for someone to admit the obvious. Dain said nothing, which was worse. The first night after Rourke left, I did not sleep. The second night, I slept badly. The third night, Archer got tired of my restlessness and climbed halfway onto my bed. He was too big for it. He knew. He did not care. I woke with one leg pinned under him, unable to move, staring at the ceiling while he snored in my ear like a broken pump. "Traitor," I whispered. He opened one eye, then closed it again. By the end of the week, Mara cornered me in the kitchen. Not dramatically. Mara did not need drama. She just set a bowl of stew in front of me, sat across from me, and waited. I lasted almost 4 minutes. "What?" She folded her hands. "That was never good." "Are you going to read the slate, or are you planning to glare at it until it enlists itself?" I read it. "All of it?" "Enough." "Craven." I stirred the stew. "Yes, all of it." And it is exactly what he said. Assessments, service options, medical review, probation because of my record, animal handling exception review for Archer, training in New Atlantis. The last 2 words came out rougher than I wanted. Mara heard it. Of course she did. "New Atlantis," she said. I looked down. The well lived under New Atlantis like a bad memory the city tried to bury under glass and fountains. I had not been back since they shipped me out. Not once. I had told myself that was because there was nothing there for me. Maybe that was true. Maybe I was afraid the place had kept part of me. Dane came in carrying a tool roll and dirt from wherever he had been pretending not to listen. "You will have to face it eventually," he said. "I don't have to face anything." "You do if you keep carrying it." I set the spoon down. Mara gave Dane a look. He ignored it, because sometimes even old soldiers choose death. "You think I'm scared of a city?" I asked. Dane hung the tool roll by the door. "No." "Good. I think you're scared of becoming the boy they dragged out of it." That one landed clean. Mara's face tightened. "Dane." He did not apologize. I stood so fast the chair scraped back. Archer lifted his head from near the stove. "I'm going to check the fence," I said. "It's dark," Mara said. "Fence doesn't care." I left before either of them could stop me. The night air hit cold. Aquila's sky was clear enough to make a man feel small if he let it. I walked the fence line with Archer beside me, saying nothing. He stayed close, close enough that his shoulder brushed my hip now and then, not pushing, just there. I made it halfway around the south edge before I stopped. The new rails were lighter than the old ones. Every replacement board showed where the attack had touched us. I hated that. I hated seeing the seams, the repaired places, the evidence that something had broken. Then I looked at my hands on the fence. Scars across the knuckles, old cuts, new ones, the faint mark where Archer had bitten through my glove years ago. I was all seams, still standing. Archer sniffed the dirt near the fence post, decided it was beneath him, and sat. "You think I should go?" I asked him. He yawned. "Helpful." He leaned against my leg. That was his answer to most things. When I came back, Dane was on the porch. Of course he was. He sat with 2 cups of caf, one beside him, untouched, a peace offering or a trap. With Dane, the difference was often timing. I sat. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "I should not have said it like that." I stared at him. He looked deeply uncomfortable. I realized he was apologizing. Badly, but still. "No," I said. "You shouldn't have." He nodded. The silence stretched again. Then I said, "You were right." He looked at me. I hated giving him that. So I added, "Don't get used to it." His mouth twitched. "The well still feels like a hand around my throat," I said. I hate that. I hate that a place can still own part of you when you're not even there. Dane picked up his caf. "Places don't own you. They mark you." "What's the difference?" "Ownership means you can't leave. A mark is just proof you survived." I looked toward the dark fields. Mara moved inside the house, visible through the window. Warm light framed her as she washed dishes she would later claim did not need help. "If I go," I said, "I leave you and Mara here." "Yes." "You say that like it's nothing." "It is not nothing." "You got shot." "Barely." I turned to glare at him. He held up a hand. Fine, not barely. That farm was nearly overrun. It was attacked by spacers, and we survived. Because Archer and I were here. Partly. If I leave. If you leave, Mara and I continue being who we were before you decided we were helpless. The words were not cruel. That made them harder to argue with. Dane leaned forward, elbows on knees. You think staying is loyalty. Maybe it is. Or maybe it is fear wearing a loyal coat. I laughed once. You always talk like this when you're trying to win. I talk like this when you're too stubborn for plain speech. I am not scared to join. No, you are scared you might belong there. I looked at him sharply. Dane held my eyes. That is different. The porch creaked under Archer's weight as he climbed up and settled beside my boots. He looked from Dane to me, judging the conversation and finding us both lacking. Mara came out a moment later with a cloth over one shoulder. There you both are, she said, arguing like fence posts again. We're not arguing, I said. Dane said, discussing. Same thing with less honesty. She sat on my other side. That was when I knew they had planned it. I looked between them. This is an ambush. Mara nodded. Yes, Dane said, a mild one. No such thing. Mara took my hand. That was worse than any lecture. Her fingers were warm and rough from work. She looked at my hand like she was memorizing it. When you came here, she said, you were all elbows, anger, and bones. You stole 2 ration bars from my pantry the first week. I was hungry. You had eaten breakfast. I was emotionally hungry. Dane snorted. Mara squeezed my hand. You ran from us because you thought leaving first meant no one could send you away. I swallowed. You do not have to run now, she said, and you do not have to stay just to prove you won't. I looked away. Mara's voice changed. Softer. That was rare, and it cut through me. You are not abandoning us by wanting a life. I don't know if I want it. Then find out. What if I go and it changes everything? It will. That was not comforting. She smiled sadly. Children leaving always does. I almost argued that I was not a child, but the way she said it had nothing to do with age. Dane stared out at the yard. His jaw was tight. Mara noticed. Say something useful. I have been. Say something kind. He shifted like she had asked him to dance on the table. Then he looked at me. I do not want you to go, he said. My chest tightened. He kept going before I could speak. But wanting you here is not the same as believing you should stay. That was Dane's kind of love. No wrapping, no polish, just the truth placed in your hands whether it hurt or not. I don't know how to be Vanguard, I said. Dane shrugged. No one does until they learn. I know how to be here. Yes, I know the farm. Yes, I know you. He looked at me. Yes. The word carried more than agreement. It carried years. The garbage bin, the shotgun, the rules, the rifle lessons, the fence line. The first time I called him sir and meant it. The spacer fight, the badge. I looked down at Archer. I know him. Archer opened one eye. Mara said, then take what you know with you. I sat there for a long time. The night pressed around the porch. The repaired farm stood under the stars, scarred and stubborn. Home. For the first time, I understood that home was not a chain. It was a place you could return to. The next morning, I decided. Not loudly, not with some grand speech. I woke before sunrise, sat on the edge of my bed, and knew I was going. The knowledge scared me enough that I almost changed my mind. Instead, I packed. There was not much. A few shirts, spare socks, work gloves, my data pad, Mara's scarf, even though it still itched, the Vanguard slate, Dane's badge, a small pouch of credits I had earned honestly, which still felt strange enough to mention. Archer watched from the doorway. You're coming, I told him. He blinked slowly. I know you assumed. I'm confirming. He stepped into the room and sniffed my bag, then tried to shove one of his stolen shirts inside. "No." He shoved harder. "No, that smells like death." He growled. I let him keep the shirt. Some battles are not worth the blood. I was folding the last of my clothes when Dane appeared in the doorway. He held a wooden box, old, dark, worn smooth at the edges, not decorative exactly, but cared for. He crossed the room, tossed it onto the bed like it was nothing, and said, "For your protection, or whatever." Then he turned to leave. "That's it?" I asked. He stopped. "You want a ceremony?" "No, but maybe an explanation." "Open it." I did. Inside, nestled in cloth, was a Razorback service revolver. The metal was dark and worn at the grip, but clean, well cared for, the kind of weapon that had seen hard years and survived because someone respected it. Beside it sat 12 rounds, lined neatly in 2 rows of 6. I looked up. Dane was already gone. Of course he was. I picked up the revolver. It was heavier than I expected, not in weight, in meaning. I turned it in my hand, careful, remembering every weapons lesson Dane had drilled into me until safety became muscle memory. The grip fit well enough. Too well, maybe. I went after him. By the time I reached the porch, he was halfway across the yard toward the barn. "Dane." He kept walking. "Dane." He stopped, but did not turn. "Thank you." His shoulders rose and fell once. "Keep it clean," he said. Then he disappeared into the barn. Mara found me a minute later and hugged me hard enough to threaten my ribs. She had packed food. Of course she had. Calf, jerky for Archer, bandages, more socks than one man could need unless he was marching through a swamp. A letter I was not allowed to read until I left. "You will write," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Not just logs, to me. "Yes, ma'am." "And you will eat." "Yes, ma'am." "And if anyone mistreats Archer, you will tell me." I looked at her. She looked deadly serious. "Yes, ma'am." Archer leaned into her side. She placed a hand on his plaited head. "You watch him." He huffed. "I know he makes it difficult." Another huff. "Rude," I said. Mara kissed my forehead before I could dodge. I let her. Dane came out last. No speech, no embrace. He handed me a holster for the Razorback and adjusted the strap across my hip without asking. His hands were steady, mine were not. When he finished, he stepped back. For a second, I thought he might salute. Instead, he said, "Do not embarrass me." I smiled despite myself. "That your goodbye?" "No, that was a warning." Then he pulled me into a hug. It was brief, awkward, almost violent, and over before I could decide what to do with my arms. But it happened. When he stepped back, his eyes were bright and furious about it. "Go," he said. So I did. The trip to Aquila City felt longer than it should have. I walked instead of taking the rover. I told myself Archer needed to stretch his legs. The truth was, I needed the road, needed the dust, needed the slow leaving instead of the sudden one. The farm shrank behind us. I looked back only once. Mara stood on the porch. Dane stood beside her, arms crossed. The house looked smaller from the road. Weathered. Repaired. Alive. Archer bumped my leg with his shoulder. "Yeah," I said. "I'm moving." Aquila City was awake when we arrived. It smelled like engine exhaust, dust, hot metal, livestock, and frying food. Ships came and went from the port, lifting above the walls on blue-white fire. Merchants shouted. Rangers moved through the crowd. Trackers studied wanted boards. People gave Archer a wide path and me a wider one than usual. Maybe word had spread. Maybe I looked like someone leaving. Major Rourke waited near the ranger station, exactly where he said he would be. Same clean posture, same unreadable face. The UC Marine uniform looked out of place against Aquila dust, and yet he seemed comfortable in it. Men like him brought their own ground with them. He saw me, then Archer, then the bag over my shoulder. "You came," he said, "observant." "I try. I haven't signed anything yet." "No. I still don't like being pushed." "You were invited." Feels similar, only until you say no. I looked at him, then at the slate in his hand, then back toward the road that led home. Archer stood beside me, calm in the middle of the city's noise. His blue-teal hide caught the sunlight. The stolen shirt Mara had definitely washed and slipped into my pack anyway hung partly from the side pocket. I thought about staying one last time. Then I thought about walls and doors and the difference between running away and walking forward. "I'll go," I said. Rourke nodded once, not triumphant, not surprised, just acknowledging the weight of it. "Then we begin with transport to New Atlantis." The words hit like cold water. New Atlantis. Jemison, the city above the well, the place I had been taken from as a child, wrists held by security, pockets empty, stomach full of fear and anger. I laughed once under my breath. Rourke raised an eyebrow. "Problem?" "No." But my hand moved to the razorback on my hip, then to the badge in my pocket, then down to Archer's head. "No problem," I said again. I had spent years trying not to go back. Now I was headed there by choice. Archer looked up at me, his eyes narrowed as if asking whether this was a bad idea. "It probably is," I told him. He huffed. "Yeah, I know." Rourke started toward the port. I followed. Aquila City moved around us, alive and loud and dusty. Behind me was the farm. Ahead of me was New Atlantis. Between the two was a path I had not expected, carrying everything I had been and everything I might become. The boy from the well was going home, not in chains this time. This time he walked,